all, one and all, to the 132nd edition of India Research Meetings. Uh, Good evening, good morning, wherever you are joining from. Uh, I hope you have been blessed through our meetings. Continue to support us, and this is we usually meet every Thursday. We have been doing so for the last 3 years, and it's at 9 p.m. IST. Uh, Today we celebrate and remember uh, Father Stan Swami, who was martyred just 3 years back on July 5th, 2021. So today's topic is actually very relevant. The memory of Stan Swami is kept alive. Even today, U.S. House has passed a resolution urging India to independently probe the death of Stan Swami, Father Stan Swami, and so the book is written by Alpa Shah, and Dr. Mano will review it. Dr. Manu is a serial book reviewer and a worldwide preacher, and he reviews books. I've seen him review books. I think at least one book every month, and he's a Bible teacher, worldwide preacher, and an encourager. And thank you, Dr. Mano, for agreeing to speak to us about this book and reviewing it. Thank you. Over to Dr. Mano. I'll stop the share
So,
now.
thank you for India's research for giving me an opportunity to share what I read from the book of Incarceration, BK16, and the Search for Democracy in India. So I found it very insightful, useful, and contemporary commentary about India today. So it is an essential read for all those who are interested in the idea of India, the nation of India, being a democracy and continuing as a healthy democracy. So the researcher, Alpa Shah, has done a laborious research. Especially, she was able to meet or go to the place where the 16 people were arrested, documented it, heard the stories, and she has compiled it into a very interesting book, but insightful book. So she focuses on the people involved in human rights activities, fighting for the rights of the poor, tribals, marginalized, exploited laborers, etc. So 16 people were arrested. So the photos are here. I will not tell all the names. So most of those who were arrested were arrested without any warrant. So just with the FIR, first information report, that to return in a language none of them understood. It was written in Marathi language. So people who were arrested did not know why they were arrested. And so the background is what we see as the historical place. So if you see the history of the British India, it began with the War of Plassey, and the last battle was in Koregaon. So the untouchables fought in the British Army in all those wars. Mahars had served the British Army for over 100 years. So Dalits joined the British Army to escape untouchability. So there was a war between the Pesawas or Pesavis and the Dalit regiment, that is Mahar regiment. So the Dalits won, the Mahar regiment won. So the British built a victory pillar called Vijay Stamp, as it was the final victory after several Maratha wars that was fought for nearly 40 long years. So it was a important historical, according to the British. So this war memorial was appropriated by the Dalits. It is interesting. So uh, as a closer look at the names etched in the marble plague are Mahar British soldiers. And the Dalits celebrate the battle of their victory over the upper caste. For the British, it was victory over the Marathas who were representing India. So, at least in their view. So, but Dalits saw from a different perspective. It was like a caste war. So, Dr. Ambedkar addressed the Mahar gathering at this place on 1st January 1927. And he supported the idea of a yearly celebration every year, January 1. So the Dalits came and started celebrating the victory, the assertion, or their dignity, or their rights. So a Mahar soldier and Captain Staunton was the person who led the British regiment in the last war, was resurrected as a Dalit hero. So Dalits have successfully re-signified a war memorial erected to represent British victory over a competing empire, as the victory was over the Peshawas or Marathas. So Mahar regiment was disbanded in 1892. So it was interesting that there was opposition for the regiment to be called as Mahar regiment. And Ambedkar argued with the British. If the Sikh, Dogra, Gurkha, and Rajput regiments can exist, why the Untouchables regiment was disbanded? So his, we can say his effort was rewarded after nearly 50 years. The separate Mahar regiment was reinstituted by the British in 1941, just before the independence. So the 200-year celebration that has happened on 1st January 2018. So it was known as the Elgar Parishad Convention. So when people gathered, actually every year, maybe 6 lakhs, sometimes 10 lakhs of the Dalits used to gather at the year beginning in that place. So they have some rituals, traditions, and it is like a get together, like a mela, and they celebrate it with great enthusiasm. So the 200-year celebration also was an important thing because, and they had planned for it, and they made the convention, they call the convention as Elgar Parishad Convention. So, but there was opposition even before that could happen. Maybe 3-4 weeks ahead of time, there were WhatsApp groups, there were WhatsApp messages that it should not be celebrated, it should be abandoned, and those who are celebrating are not nationalists. So that kind of rumors, that information was circulated. And on 1st January 2018, when the people started coming for celebration, so there was violence. So it was officially one person was killed and few were injured and all other things happened. So this was an attack on their assertion. So they cannot assert their victory. So that was the message they got. So based on this, or after this, 16 people were arrested under UAPA from various parts of the country, stating they were conspiring against India. So UAPA was a law that has been imposed to restrict the terrorism, but it is mostly used against dissidents, not only of the central government, even the state governments use it. So now we have more stringent law has come. So at least in this, so we will be talking about that little later. So the legal process was long, and even if they were acquitted, so it could take 5 years, sometimes a decade. So they were accused of denting the image of the country in the name of human rights violations. So they were saying that there is no human right violation. So because for them there is no rights, it's only duty. If you see the hierarchical caste system, it prescribes duties and privileges to the upper caste. So there is no rights. So when you talk about human rights, it is not, it is a Western idea. It is being imposed on India. So anybody who speaks about human rights cannot be an Indian. So that is the implication. So they were championing the fight for democracy for India among three minorities. So the author has picked up only three: the Adivasis, Dalits, and Muslims. She has not mentioned about Christians or Sikhs or others. So she says these were the three people group among whom there was a dynamic democratic right activism or human rights activism. So the people who were arrested were those who were involved in this, not really directed to Elgar Parishad. So the national institutions, so the all national institutions are at their disposal to silence the dissenting voices of human rights defenders. So repeatedly attacking minority communities with impunity. So these are some of the strategies that is happening, and the national institutions seem to be watching it as spectators. So there is also moral policing. That means anybody can report about anybody, and the police will act. So those who speak against the government risk being dragged away by security forces and family lives ruined. So what they did is these people were termed as urban Naxals. So this is a name that they branded with. It has become a common thing. Whoever speaks against the government, whoever criticizes the government, whoever says what the government does is not right, so they will be coerced into silence. Even those who speak, they speak out often at a great personal cost. So the democratic right activists, university professors, lawyers, trade unions, artists, journalists, and other activists. So those arrested have defended the social and economic rights of a broad spectrum of vulnerable communities across the wide geographical breadth of India. Already we put them in three, that is Adivasis, the Dalits, and the Muslims. That includes the people who are working in various companies as informal workers where they were not given proper salary or perks. So the Brazilian Catholic Archbishop, as quoted by the author, when I give food to the poor, they call me a saint. When I ask why they are poor, they call me a communist. So this is the stand even today. When you ask questions, so they were branded as Naxals or communists. So a new term, yeah, fancy term is urban nexus. So the author says when you talk about terrorism, you have to think from two perspectives. The first is they plant bombs involving violence, engineer riots, they create fear in the society, they undermine the foundation of democracy. So they fight against the democracy itself, against the people, against the government. But the second, those who misuse the power or those who abuse the power to harass those who do not conform to the politics of their current masters. So these people are part of the government agencies. So who please their current masters? The current masters have certain political ideology, and whoever speaks against them, they are identified and they are abused with all the power. So they are the second kind of terrorists. So we are going to see some of the people. I'm not going to pick up all those people, but one few people who really did a remarkable job. All of them did a good job. So because of time limitation and other issues, I may not be able to explain all the 60. So one of them is Sudha Bharadwaj, surrendered her American citizenship to serve in India. So when many people want to aspire for American citizenship, those who are willing to take donkey flights to reach that nation. So a lot of undocumented migrants going into those nations. So they say at least nearly 100,000 Indians try to go into US without documentation every year. So in that context, we see a woman who is committed to serve the nation, committed to serve the poor of the people, so committed to serve the marginalized. So she renounced her citizenship, American citizenship, which she was eligible because of her parents, and took Indian citizenship. And the narrative we can see the embassy when she went to surrender the American citizenship, they were asking whether you are doing it in good sense, you are doing it in your right sense, are you because people are queuing to get this and you are just throwing it away. She said, yes, I have made a conscious decision. So she was very convinced that that was her call. So later she worked with the labor leader Shankar Gohan Yogi. We know that he was killed. In fact, he was murdered because he was uniting the laborers who were exploited, the marginalized, and so that was working with him. So in this context, we have to know about Salva Judam. Is a civilian militiaman. So went hand in hand with the classical techniques of strategic hamletting. So strategic hamletting is an idea or a concept is to empty people from or remove the villagers into designated camps, cut off supply lines of rebels and launch of fresh strikes into their strongholds. So this is the strategy. So Salva Judam was created by the Congress government. So it was civilians who were armed, who were trained. So they were trained to fight against the Maoists. So, but when they had the gun, when they had the power, so they were used or they themselves killed many local people. So there was no accountability. So the whole thing was the whole area of land when it is given for development. So when you say development, it may be given for the development of mines or development of industries or development of any corporate world. So when they were handed over, So the villagers refused to go from their own land, even though they were given designated camps. So in the camps, they were like orphans. They were unfamiliar and they did not have the livelihood. It's not just about the village. Even their livelihood was snatched. So they rebelled against, and there were some people who were supporting them. So this happened in village after village, but it never came to the mainstream media. So what she did was she did the documentation, collecting evidence, presenting in courts, and getting orders from the courts not to dispossess the people. So they are not voluntarily giving up the land, they are being dispossessed by force. So all these evidences were presented in the court. Apart from presenting in the court, they had to fight on the streets by doing some dharnas or bandhs. So she says the battle to fight for democratic rights and the battle to defend yourself while trying to get those democratic rights. So it was a two-way warfare. One is helping those who have been deprived of the democratic rights. So again, defend yourself because you will be branded as a rebel because you are defending the defenseless. You become the voice of the voiceless. So she was arrested. Then we have Father Stan Swami. So his biography is given. He is from Tamil Nadu and rich landowning community in his own home. He saw that the agricultural workers were not treated with dignity and they were beaten up, which Father Stan Swami, as a young man, as a college student, opposed. And then he came as a priest of the Catholic Church. He was trained, and we had a lot of experiences. So when he came to Jharkhand, so he looked at the Adivasis. So he wanted to work among Adivasis. Why he wanted to work among Adivasis? So I'll say a little later how the church failed, how Stan Swami saw the church fail to work among the people who are dispossessed. So one of the things he observed was in the prisons, 97% of the prisoners who were arrested and put in jail saying that they were part of the Maoist movement or the communist movement had nothing to do with Maoists. So he went to at least 4 jails and met the inmates, talked with them, documented it, and did a research. And they were all people living below the poverty line. So that means none of them had visitors. So the prisoners who were there, if somebody wants to visit them, it is going to be expensive affair. They have to travel a lot and they may not have enough money to travel and go back and also give some food or pocket money to those who are inside the prison. So they are almost abandoned by the family. So he did a research and found how then he wanted to bring succor or he wanted to help them to be released. So he found out there were 3 reasons that these Adivasis were part of the guerrilla movement. Some understood they were genuinely fighting for the cause. Second, sometimes these guerrillas used to bribe them or give them money for the family or when they were sick. So that attracted them. Third, they were forced to join them. So the one thing that stands out is the guerrillas treated Adivasis with dignity and respect, what they longed for. So when the other government machinery or the bureaucracy treated them with contempt, so they were not treated as individuals, people, humans. So these People treated them with dignity and respect. So Father Stan Swami stood for the rights of these people who were in the prisons. So Stan gives how the church failed. So he was not working along with the church because the church failed. He says the institution run by the church were monuments that kept ordinary people away. So how he explains it is very important. He felt the multinational corporations occupy a large land area and displace poor people from their villages. So this large land area may become a township. So that will have quarters for the officers, maybe the guest rooms, the dignitaries, maybe a school and everything. So this is for those who work there. And these workers are not natives, they are migrants. So they come from other parts of the country, educated, maybe engineers, school teachers, doctors, clerks, and all those people. And the poor people are not accommodated because they don't have education. So the poor people, even if compensation is offered, it does not give them an alternative livelihood. So that in the township, they are not accommodated. So what the church does is the church starts schools, colleges, and institutions for the workers in the township. So the middle class, educated migrants from all over the country who are in that township get a good education from the church-run institutions. The marginalized, they are left out. They're outside the township. So they may just sustain themselves as serving the rich people. They may come in as servant maids or sweepers and other menial jobs. So the poor are compelled to serve the rich without education for generations. So this is how Father Stan Swami said the church has failed. So we have to serve this marginalized, the dispossessed. Instead, they are serving only them. So it was the strong statement or a condemnation on the church. So then he also did further research and he found that poverty was intrinsically tied to inequality, injustice, and power. So why they are poor? Why they are poor generation after generation? Why they are continuously being exploited? So they are poor because of inequality. They're poor because of injustice. They are poor because of the power wielding people. So he was a priest who was different, who did not attend the prayers or celebrate communion or was always traveling. So he understood how the administration, the government worked. So appealing to the government did not bring the results. So he appealed to the government. So for example, regarding the jail inmates who were there without any reason who could be released. So the jailers did not give cooperation. So he had to do the research directly and he had to press with the officials, higher officials, the secretaries, and to the politicians. But nobody cared for them. So what he observed or what he taught the people, behind the police, there was an administration. Behind that, there was a government. And behind that, there was a ruling party. And behind it all, there was the capitalist class. So the resources where the hilly regions, mountainous regions where the Adivasis dwell are rich in various ways. And the capitalists want to invest and multiply their profit. So, whichever party is in power, somehow the cash or the capitalists could run the show or change the situation. So he also said the written laws are like a spider web. It will trap the poor and the weak, but it will be torn to pieces by the rich and powerful. So it is an interesting statement. Written laws can be used or is used only to trap or arrest the poor, the weak, who cannot speak for themselves, who have no defenders. But for the rich and powerful, they will tear it. That means they will find loopholes. So they will disregard the law and go ahead. So he died in jail. We saw that earlier. So even there is a request by the US House to demanding an independent probe into his death. So he was 83-year old. He had severe Parkinson's disease, and he had spondylitis. Then he had hearing impaired in both ears, and he was recovering from a second hernia operation. That was the time he was arrested. He was not able to walk by himself, hear, eat, or drink without support. So life in jail broke him. So even the request to have straw to drink water was rejected. Life in jail broke him. His bail plea on health grounds was never granted, and he died in custody. So the other person is Anand. So he was an academician and grandson-in-law of Ambedkar. So, and he writes about the hidden apartheid. So the reservation, he writes about reservation, is critical about reservation, has benefited a few who are in the lower ranks of governance. It has not helped them to go into the upper level of governance. So those who are in the lower ranks of governance, they are used to oppress their own people, oppress the Dalits. So the reservation actually divided the Dalits. So those who are with the government, those who are not with the government, that means those who are ordinary people. So they represented the government rather than representing the Dalits and helping them to get their rights. So he says it has failed. So he said the reservation cannot lead Dalits to equality. So what he says is the Dalits are divided into subcaste, and they will be again divided by politics. They will splinter. There will not be one unity. So they have to combine class. So economic marginalization and social marginalization. So these two people should come together to fight for their rights. So his research was on atrocities against Dalits, which he found in the 3 decades of economic liberation, that is 90s. So economic liberation and globalization, it has risen, it has multiplied. So it has not come down. So the economic prosperity did not give them enlightenment for the people who were ruling, who were in authority. Rather, it was hatred for them, and they think they don't deserve anything, Dalits and Adivasis. So the oppression increased. So the reservation that was put in the constitution, he said, it is makes untouchability outlawed, but the caste is not outlawed. So that means the caste will exist. Because of the reservation, the caste system is not banned. So only untouchability is banned. So it will be difficult for the Dalits to get real freedom. So the right-wing elements have reappropriated Dr. Ambedkar, saffronized and iconized him. So then the author makes a statement. Hindutva ideology, on the one hand, created a gold Hindu Vedic past that subsumed other cultures and religions. On the other hand, it has also produced a Muslim enemy, which was blamed for destroying the glorious past by victimizing Hindus for hundreds of years under Muslim rulers. So this was done. So Muslims were the primary victims of Hindutva ideology. Dalits and Adivasis were also targets, but in a different way, for they could be incorporated into Hindutva and they would be attacked. So this is what the author identifies, that there are two kinds of victims, the primary victims and the secondary victims. So when Anand was arrested in the court, only a sealed envelope was submitted and no other documents were given, public documents. So there's many cases. So the government gives a sealed envelope stating it is an issue of national security. So the judges can read it. It will not be for public, and the lawyers who are defending cannot have any information on that. Mostly when the sealed covers were given, so the judgment went in favor of the government and the defenders were left helpless. So then another person who was arrested was Sudhir Davale, continued the human rights work on Dalits atrocities across Maharashtra, exposing gang rapes, murders, and massacres in which Dalits were victims. And he also edited a magazine to educate the Dalits. So like that, we see that there were many, 16 of them who were arrested and who were charge sheeted and who are in jail. Some have come out, some are still there. So the fabricated letters, how they produce evidence. It has been found that more than 24,000 files and folders have been copied from Stan's computer onto the hacker's own server. The hacker had even created a backup folder on Stan's computer to organize the files they wanted to siphon off. So this is how they did it. And the Pegasus software, which was used only against terrorists and serious criminals, but it was used against pro-democracy activists, journalists, IT experts, lawyers, and opposition leaders. So, one place, the other says, hack for hire. So you can hire hackers, so who can do the hacking job. Sadly, government hired hackers who can do this job, and there was no accountability. So in this context, the digital rights is how to protect the democratic rights in the cyberspace. So not just digital rights must be the frontier of any contemporary fight for the democracy. So now the digital divide and control over the digital media, as we saw in the last few months, the social media is very powerfully communicating the truth against the fake narratives. So they want to control the social media so that they become arm of the government. So the other aspect is judiciary. So we see the judges were recusing themselves one after another from hearing the petitions related to the BK case. So the author says the Supreme Court has surrendered to the government. So what the government expects? So the author says the war without witnesses. So if there are activists, if there are people like this who collect evidence, who submit to the courts, so that becomes a hindrance. So in the court, there should not be any evidence. For that, if there is a war, if there is people being dispossessed or people being evacuated, if there is such kind of issues, there should be without witnesses. So that is the desire. So there is a need for free judiciary. So the author observes that during the emergency, activists could hide in a lawyer's house and be sheltered there. So 1975, 76, 77 period. Now lawyers are threatened and are being arrested. One activist said, "We have stopped going to court. Democracy will not survive without a free judiciary." So Sudha, one of the persons who were arrested, injustice anywhere is threat is a threat to justice everywhere. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. And also she writes about the free media, that mainstream media is following the government policies without criticism. So those who were arrested, so they faced media trials, and some of those arrested did not want to appear in the mainstream media because it was the discussion or debate were like kangaroo courts, where all will pound upon them. So they didn't want to defend themselves in the media. So good journalists, the media plays the role of prophet in a democracy. So, but when the media doesn't play that role, true prophet role, they become false prophets. So threats, harassment, attacks, killings of journalists is evident or is waiting for those who stand for the truth. So this is a reality that people are facing. There are also many cases of refusal of visas to foreign journalists. That is a many list. You can do a Google search and find out. So a term that the author uses, democratic backsliding. So she's asking the question, is Indian democracy is experiencing a democratic backsliding? So the question is, will there be a course correction, or fascism will make the democratic backsliding more accelerated or faster? She writes, fascism in India may not be like in other places. It need not be, but it is certainly fascism. So the BK case, she brings 7 conclusions. A typical case where the 16 people were arrested from various parts of the country, and some of them are still there. Some got bail, at least one died. So what do we learn from this episode? So she brings 7 things. A targeted state-driven attempt to silence the BK-60. So by doing so, the others will learn a lesson. Evidence fabricated and media used to turn public against the BK-60. So this is another trick, or the another tool in the toolbox. Cyber espionage research shows the hacker for fire mercenary gangs were used to implant false evidence. So the arrests were made to divert the attention of the people away from instigators of communal violence and other violence targeting the Dalits. So the 5th thing is the BKK shows how institutions, including the judiciary, have been dominated. The 6th thing is the ruling party dominates narratives, communication networks, mainstream media to propagate their fake news. International institutions can be complicit and even propping up a regime that targets democratic right activists. So these are 7 lessons or 7 warnings from the whole episode. So then she also writes about the signs of hope. Histories of grassroots activism against inequality and injustice are unveiled in BK-16. So the 16 people, they were grassroots activists. So it is not about formal institution, but India has a robust tradition of democratic rights activist organization, social movements that do not belong to any political party. So that gives hope. They seem to be last bastions of democracy in India. Rather, they can be called as custodians. So these custodians of democracy are difficult to silence, for they are an amorphous force. Most live simply with few possessions or resources. Their main wealth is their courage, determination, and willingness to relentlessly work for justice without monetary reward or recognition. So they have also the resources, the intellectual global analysis of economic exploitation, injustice, social oppression, the networks of people they know. So they have a network that gives them input or affirms them or encourages them. So these two help them. So this is what we see. This is a valuable book to be read by all those who love India, concerned about justice, fraternity, equality, peace, and prosperity. So this is how I have seen this book. I read this book. These are some of my comments or what I read or what I learned. You have to unmute.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Mano, for your wonderful review of the book. It's like everybody can escape without reading the book, but I encourage everyone to read the book. I think that's our objective here, to get people to read more, uh, particularly a reawakening of the Christian mind, a Christian renaissance, a Christian literary renaissance, as Dr. Vishal calls it. That is our objective here. So thank you. And yeah, it's very sad. I mean, it's 3 years since Stan Swami died. Father Stan Swami died, and we actually don't. We heard about these names, Sudha Bharadwaj and Stan Swami and all these people. We heard only when they were arrested. I think that is a tragedy of India, that these heroes were celebrated only when they were arrested, and without cause, and some of them died. So I think that is another uh, question to ponder, that how the mainstream media is hiding these like these people. Several news of all these persecutions, and how of these heroes. I think that is a question we all need to ask, and stand up for. And also how I think Stan Swami reflects the life of Jesus Christ, that he was also unjustly accused, and false witnesses were used. In this case, digital false witness was used to convict him, and and later kill him without even a trial. So I think that is Stan Swami is indeed a shadow of Jesus Christ. So over to anybody who wants to ask questions. Are there any questions on the live stream, Sister Oila?
Yes, brother.
Are there any
So
questions
are you audible?
on the live stream?
One second. No, no, brother.
Okay, okay. So I'd like to, ask one question. Is this was because Stan Swami is from Tamil Nadu? Was Stan Swami known, well known before this incident in Tamil Nadu, in the local press?
He was known a little in Bangalore because he was a ISI, that is Catholic institution, director for some time, and he brought some ideas and changes, and he trained many young people. So that time he was somewhat known, but he felt whom all he trained did not shine well, except for one or two. So others were, sucked into the system. So they didn't live like him. So that was his heart pain. Yeah, certainly he was not known among the Christian community.
Do you see that as a failure, that that we don't know about? I mean, he himself saw that the church was a failure, but another failure is that, only when he is in jail, or when he is convicted and when he dies, that people get to know about, this 84-year-old man who dedicated his life to, this kind of social work and uplifting the tribals and Dalits and all these oppressed people. Right?
Yeah, so one of the reasons is people don't read. Even seminary students don't read. So even though they may have PhD or master in theology, so they read the books that are in the library, mostly written by Christian authors, and they don't even read non-Protestant authors, non-evangelical authors. So even the liberal theologians' writings are not read by the evangelical scholars. So leave alone the secular authors or the Catholic authors. So when you don't read, so you don't get the broad spectrum. So evangelical understanding of society, culture is shallow. So better understanding is with the other theologians who are called as liberal theologians, and also Catholics, and also secular anthropologists. So they understand the caste system, the culture, the society, the structures of the society. So because of this, they are not educated, and their preaching also reflects that. It is more a devotional preaching rather than educating them to be a strong witness for the truth in a culture which is not favoring the truth.
Yes, I think you have touched on the, yes, Dr. Brother Shibu. Yes,
Yeah, this is Shibu. I teach at Christ University, Bangalore. Thank you very much for the review. I just would like to know what about their the work which they have already done. For example, Stan Swami, is the work continuing there in the place where he started the work, where his disciples or the followers are able to do the work?
Yeah, in some places it is happening. So only in the Signs of Hope, I said there is not only the authors said it is happening, and there are some people who may not do what all he did, maybe parts. So what Stan Swami did has to be done by 5 or 6 people. So in the area of research, in the area of advocacy, in the area of living with the Adivasis and learning from them. So they were really a great personalities. So to replace them with one person may not be a possibility. So there are people, but there is a vast gap, we can say. So maybe these leaders may measure up in the coming days as they go through the experiences.
As inventory continues.
So maybe church has failed to respond to the crisis, as Stan Swami said, and also now we have failed to understand Stan Swami like people, and now again we are failing to understand the gap probably. Otherwise, how do we fill the gap? Because the church has to fill the gap, isn't it?
Yeah, church has to fill the gap, but church fails means God may rise people. So that is what happened. So Father Stan was part of the church, but he had to disconnect himself from the church and do it in his own way. So he was a towering personality, he can do that. So all youngsters cannot do that. It may take time for them to mature, come to a place where they have the confidence to do that. So I think God will not fail without witnesses. So there will be always witnesses. And even if the church failed to produce, even if the leaders fail to identify and mentor them, or if the church failed to pray for them or support them, I think God will raise witnesses.
I think, to my understanding, he was a very good social analyst. He's one of the very profound academician. So that kind of, developing such kind of people amongst youngsters, I think it could be possible because of the social media, YouTube coming. Many youngsters seems to be coming up, not in Christian circle, but in general. So I think eventually that may come up. They might be doing research, but not to the extent which people like Stan Sami or the people whom he has trained with hope. He was very powerful in social analysis, it seems.
Yes.
Hello, brother. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello. Am I audible?
Yes. Who is this?
I'm Aniket here.
Oh, yeah. Please.
Yeah. So, brother, I just a small reflection and a few observations. Like, I'm Aniket. I'm a doctor, an MBBS doctor from Pune. So, I would just like to state that I was there on 1st of January, uh, 2018 at Bhima Koregaon when this whole thing started. Okay. So I come from a subaltern background, and I've seen this movement grow in years. This Bhima Koregaon movement and how it has acquired a pan-India identity amongst the Dalit. And I am a, I have I can kind of just navigate through the circles of anti-caste movements. Myself, I'm an anti-caste activist. I am I'm still dicey about I'm not come to the Christ, but just to be very sure. But I like these meetings. I have read books of Vishal Mangalwadi. I have been reading through many. I have done UPSC also. So I attend these kinds of meets which you have at India Research. So I like to ask something very pertinent. Is my question is to everybody out there, like, is the Indian church in particular, um, grappling or dealing with the issue of caste on a on a national and international scale? Because what I figured out is that unless you get the caste question solved, resolved, or you tackle that thing, I don't think things on ground are going to change, in terms of preaching and contextualizing the gospel, and making it winning souls, to be very practical that way. So I just want thoughts about yours, because what I see, I've been to many churches, the mainline churches, even the Catholics, the Orthodox, the Carolites, many denominations within those, and also the Protestant, the Evangelical, the home churches. And I see, there's a total disconnect, because what happens is now, in India, it's said in the Dalit circles or in the anti-caste circles that in the entire world you should know about sociology. If you want to know about any country, you should know the sociology of that country. But in India, if you want to know India from a societal perspective, you should know about castes. So my question is to everybody out there, including Mr. JN Manokaran. So, Vishal Mangalwadi has done some kind of work on, anti-caste from a Christian theological perspective in terms of the equality and fraternity, what the gospel kind of expounds. But I think a lot of needs to be done, especially on ground. So, so I just want to know your thoughts on that. Yeah, that's all.
Okay, so thank you for this question. So it is a difficult question to answer in one sense. Yeah. So the church has been grappling with the issue of caste uh, in several dimensions. So one is practically in the local churches. So shamefully, we can say the church is divided, and in some congregations, they belong to only one caste. So another congregation belongs to another caste. So even denominations are organized in that pattern. Even mission agencies are organized in that pattern. So it is a shameful thing. So all may not agree, all may not have the perspective. As an insider, I know this. Yes, it is a true thing, which is alarming, especially in the southern parts of the country where the Christianity is little more strong. When it comes to some of the North India, like they tried to eradicate caste system, like adding the suffix as Masi instead of having the caste names. So the surname becomes Masi, and some people in Gujarat they add Christian to the name. So if he's a Moses Christian or Andrew Christian, so Christian is the surname. So we uh, don't want to have any other identity except the Christian identity. So these are the aspects that happens in the local level. So yes, there are some activists who are fighting for the cause, so that not only inside the church, they go outside the church and also work for the dignity and the rights of the people. There are several activists, NGOs. So there are some political influence, like the Dravidian model, which also talks about everything for everybody. So that is a theme, everything for everybody. So everybody are equal. So that is the influence of the gospel that became a policy of the political party. But they are also failing in some areas to implement it in a very clear way. Even though the government policies are there, those who execute the policies are again caste minded, so they don't do a good job. So in that way, there is one way of awareness that is being created always by certain people, including Vishal, and there are certain people who are activists who are really involved. Then there are people who do intercaste marriage to demonstrate they are anti-caste, they don't follow the caste system. So then there are other academicians who do research and write, and so there are several streams of operations that happens. But are they successful? Maybe 30 to 40% successful. They have not been 100% successful. If they have been 100% successful, I think the story of India would be different.
Uh, just one more question in this context. If I can ask, can I ask?
Yeah,
Yes,
sure.
yes.
Go ahead.
Yes, sir. Yeah, so see, I was in Delhi for my UPSC studies. That was around 10 years back. And there was this magazine, if I don't know whether you know, called Forward Press. It was a bilingual magazine printed both in English and Hindi, started by a evangelical Protestant person called Ivan Costa, is friend of Vishal. if you guys might know him. So I used to regularly visit his office, and so that was a really pioneering magazine and a work started by him, because he kind of contextualized and the gospel from an anti-caste perspective. And I think on ground level, especially in University, Delhi University, he was quite influential. He had this Mahisasura Martyrdom Day celebrated at, I think, JNU or the Delhi University, and that stoked lot of, rage from the Hindutva faction. And unfortunately, all this led to him being kind of incarcerated, not incarcerated, he was actually um, targeted, and eventually Mr. Ivan had to leave India. That's what I gather. So this is what somebody has tried to do, a Christian trying to do things from anti-caste perspective with the with taking the gospel as a foundation. But well, so what I'm trying to say is that these kinds of movements should be in many, and so I just want to know thoughts like, is the church aware of these movements around, like the mainstream, the evangelical, and the lay people? Because last thing again I want to say, unless the anti-caste perspective is taken forward and contextualized in theological terms, uh, the emancipation and the redemption of India, uh, I think is not possible.
Yeah, so the forward press was a good uh, attempt, but it had to face a lot of legal opposition. And yes, so the thing is, if we do it as a pan India or a thing like that, it may be difficult to sustain at the present situation. So the more localized and the more locally sustainable and more locally grassroots level leadership doing it will be more effective. So it will be like a mushroom growth. So that is what we have to aim at. So having multiple grassroots leaders who will continuously talk. So with the forward press may not be a possibility now, but with the WhatsApp, with the social media, so there could be multiple forward press like magazines that should come from several places, and it was only in English and Hindi. So there are other languages that needs that kind of literature. So I think God has to raise a lot of local grassroots level intellectual people who could really do it in a sustainable way.
Yes, to add to your comments, I think in Kerala also there's a lot of I mean, churches are divided based on caste and many things. But I even this last 10 years has seen some kind of Christian contextualization of caste. If you have read the works of Vinil Paul, he's actually a PhD researcher. He's done his PhD already from I think JNU. So he has contextualized a lot of caste in terms of missionary movements, uh, particularly the CMS and the LMS missionary and Basel missionary movements in Kerala. So I think that is some, like Dr. Mano said, God has raised up some people. It is continuing to do so, and then thank you for your comments that you like this forum and this India Research meetings where these kind of issues are openly discussed, where you cannot discuss this in a church or perhaps even a Bible study context. So thank you for your comments. Dr. Sony Matthew has raised his hand. If there is nothing else, I will go to the next person. Dr. Aniket.
Uh, Actually, just just one question from my personal life. Okay, I've been trying to come to the Lord, and but still, as somebody mentioned, I think the intercaste marriages is one way of demonstrating that you have risen above caste. But see, again, I say I come from a subaltern background, and I've done MBBS from a state level college by merit. I gave three UPSC main attempts, and I have given one interview, and pretty much I think I am intellectually kind of credible in that way. But when I went into the Christian circles, and when I talked about, I saw friends who also came to the Lord from a Hindu background, and when it came to marriage, I think the prospect of people who came to the Lord, and they getting good suitors, like good uh, this thing, a girl or it's very limited actually, because not only see, the caste overrides everything. Even for that matter, even somebody coming from a Hindu background is a total no-no in the mainline Protestant churches, and even the evangelical circles. Only few people who have, I should not say this, those who have uh, some kind of broader perspective, on a global perspective, these are the people who will think. But the hardcore Christians who follow the gospel, they are complete no to intercaste and inter denomination marriages, and especially somebody like me coming. So I just want your thoughts on that.
Dr. Sony Matthew or Dr.
Okay,
Mano,
so yeah, can
would you
I?
like to answer? Would you like to answer this question? He's asking a very personal question, which is, uh, you know, would any of you like to answer it? Because I think we need to answer
Yeah,
this.
so this is an issue with which we are grappling with, and there are some people who are trying to promote the intercaste marriage. So we have a WhatsApp group that brings proposal of people who are not married, and we try to say that if you put your caste name, then you are not eligible to post your uh, profile. So these are small attempts. So there is no significant authoritative attempt by the bishops, archbishops, or even senior pastors. But there are several attempts where the caste is being broken. So this is a vast subject, so we can keep on talking, arguing. So yeah, so it may not, we may not be able to resolve in this conversation. So maybe we have to have the one session on caste and intercaste and other within Christianity. That may be a profitable thing.
Yeah, definitely we will arrange something like that. And
Yeah.
if you want to contact Dr. Mano, I have his contact details. So you can email me at indiaresearch75@gmail.com, and I will pass you the details of.
Can I make a comment?
Yeah,
A
yeah,
question.
yeah. Please, please,
So
please.
I just, I'm sorry I missed your presentation. I was in another meeting. But have you heard of Shashikant Senthil? There was an interview by this MP, is MP from Tamil Nadu. In the interview, he said that it is impossible to eliminate the caste system in India. And that generated a big conversation. And basically what he was saying is that it is really entrenched throughout the entire system for generations. For you to eliminate it, it is impossible. And so this analogy came up where it is a large balloon, a helium balloon. What you can do with the caste system is to reduce its effectiveness, deflate the balloon. That's possible. But if you're thinking of totally getting rid of the balloon, that will be impossible. So you can deflate the balloon, eventually to destroy the balloon. So that was an interesting illustration. Just wanted to comment that.
Yes, brother Sunil. Yes, go ahead, please, brother Sunil. Yes,
Yeah, brother. Good evening.
good evening.
Thank
Yes.
you for giving me a minute of time. Sir Manokaran, sir, thank you very much. You have enlightened me on this subject because I know very little about Bhima Koregaon, but you have detailed it very well from the time of British to the present. Thank you, so kind of you. Regarding this caste system, I have read today on Indian Express that that the legal course, that is Bachelor in Law, LLB, and so on. They are trying to. Indian government is trying to. Delhi University, especially the Delhi University is. There is a proposal that Manusmriti is to be introduced as one of the subjects in LLB. So, any comments on that, sir? And it's not at been finalized, but there are some discussions going on. Anything from you, sir? Thank you.
See, I'm not aware of that, but what happened is, so the Manusmriti was printed in Tamil and distributed to the people, and the people understood, okay, this is an oppressive legal system, and it has been an enlightenment for the public. So if they introduce it is one way a good thing, because they will know that caste oppression has a religious sanction.
Yes, brother Sunil. I hope your question is answered or your query is
Yeah,
answered.
thank
Yes,
you, brother.
yes.
No. Today itself I have read. Today morning I have read about this news in the afternoon, actually.
Yeah. Okay, I think we can close now. Thank you. Uh, thank you, Dr. Manokaran, and thank you for your time and your analysis of the book or your review of the book and your practical wisdom and in answering the questions. Thank you all those who asked questions, especially for the first time, Dr. Aniket. Thank you for your questions, and of course, Brother Shibu and Sony Matthew and Sunil and all the people who contributed to the discussions. Thank you, and hope to see you